Hi, welcome to Gamba tutorial number 18. In this tutorial we're going to have a brief look at Rosin, at how and when to use it. Because quite a few students I find tend not to know sort of quite when to use Rosin, and also don't necessarily recognise that some of the problems they're encountering with their playing are due to a lack of Rosin. To start with, it's worth pointing out that keeping your bow rosined is essential for maintaining a good tone quality, and also it's closely linked to making your viol feel and sound more responsive. Which is to say, if you don't have enough rosin, the viol won't sound at its fullest and it won't respond very easily. And I quite often find that students will come to a lesson sort of complaining that they don't feel that their viol sounds as good as it used to, or that they can't quite get that fast passage to speak properly, or that the general tone quality of what they're producing is not good enough. The default assumption is often just that there's something going wrong with the technique, but some of the time it's just because they need to put more rosin on their bow. Rosin, as I understand it, works by simply providing a source of friction. It's a sort of medium that helps the hairs of the bow interact with the string. Essentially, it helps the bow pull or push the string from side to side. So if you don't have enough of it, then the bow doesn't actually pick up the string. It doesn't connect with the string properly, and that means that the sound doesn't work basically. So I've, for the purposes of this tutorial, I've worn off as much rosin as I can, so that I can still play, but it doesn't sound great. So I'm just going to play some things to show you what I mean. And you'll notice that because the bow doesn't have this medium, this sticky substance between it and the string, the instrument's strings, the bow the hair slides across the top of the string. And that means that the sound is thinner, the beginnings of the notes are less clear, and it can often squeak, although I can't guarantee it'll squeak in this particular moment, but here's what it sounds like with not very much rosin. And we did get a squeak at the end. Yeah, so the sound is thin, and there's not much impetus to the beginnings of the notes. The solution to this, of course, is just to add some more rosin. I have, for quite a few years now, been using Melos rosin, which is sort of supposedly historical recipe for rosin, as I understand it. This is the Melos Baroque cello and bass viol rosin. I like Melos in general because it tends to be a little stickier, a little coarser somehow. I don't tend to have massive favourite rosins, but this one has served me very well for quite a few years. But of course other rosins are available, and I'm yet to be convinced that the different brands of rosin really make a huge difference to your sound. But if you want a starting point, then I can recommend Melos for treble and tenor as well. I actually use bass viol rosin on my tenor, rather than using a specific tenor rosin. You can get tenor rosin as well. I would probably urge you to get a treble or a violin rosin for the treble rather than using bass viol. It'll be too coarse and you might run into trouble with sound production. So Melos comes in a little bag. It's floppy, completely unprotective, and of course we all know that rosin shatters very, very easily, and at sort of £15 a pop, you don't really want to be dropping it when you're transporting it in this. So I actually don't use this. I have found a little cardboard box, which I've covered in duct tape, gaffer tape, to reinforce it. And inside the box I have my rosin, which is wrapped up in its little piece of cloth that it comes stuck to. And I actually use the brown case as a lining for the box, just to add a little bit of extra protection, so that when I'm out and about, of course, inevitably it gets dropped in the box, but because it's reinforced, it doesn't break the rosin. And my rosin, I'm very pleased to say, is still entirely in one piece. So I can recommend finding maybe a little jewellery box or a plastic box for things like beads. It's fairly easy to find, and transporting your rosin in that, if it doesn't already come in a tin. So with regard to applying the rosin, I was once told by a bow maker that you shouldn't rub the rosin on furiously. You should do it slowly and methodically, because he said the faster you rub the rosin, the more friction it creates and the more heat it creates. And he said that can melt the rosin particles and cause inconsistencies in the sound, where there are patches of sort of semi-molten rosin dust. I don't know what the general opinion is. That's just this fact. The maker of my bow said that. First of all, before you start applying it, don't take note of where you hold the bow, because you don't want to put rosin where your hand touches the hair, because it'll be really sticky and horrible, and as you sweat as you play, it'll feel horrible, and it'll actually stop your fingers moving smoothly on the hair. So don't rosin where you put your fingers. To apply the rosin, I tend to start towards the heel, and I apply it just above where my hand touches the hair, and I very slowly rosin up and down, not pressing too hard, just enough to keep the rosin in contact with the hair. Try and be consistent all the way along. You can sometimes feel where there's less rosin, because there's less rosin on the hair, because the friction is reduced in certain points of the bow. Mine right at the tip here seems to need a little bit extra, so I'm going to put some more on. And as you're doing this, I can recommend turning the rosin in your fingers, so that you avoid always using the same strip of the block of rosin, because that results in like a single groove all the way down the middle of your block of rosin, which becomes the only place where you can use the rosin. It ends up with a little valley in the middle of the rosin, and it's very difficult to use the sides. So to use all of the rosin, turn the block as you apply to the hair. So we're just going to keep doing that. I, as I say, have left my bow so that it's got almost no rosin on it at all. So I'm going to put a fair amount on. If you end up putting a little bit too much on, that's fine. We can get rid of it. I'll show you how to do that in a second. So here we go. Okay, so that's this, done with this. I'm going to put it straight back in the box so I don't drop it. And what I tend to do, just to get rid of the excess, is I hold the bow in my left hand, the stick, and I take my thumb and index finger and I sort of fan the hairs, and you'll see a big puff of smoke. You won't be able to see it in the video, but a big puff of smoke just came off my hairs. You could do that once or twice just to get rid of some of the excess. And that is your bow fully rosined. If I now take my bow and play, you should, I think, hear quite a difference. Here we go. Yeah, so a much fuller, more powerful sound. The faster notes are much easier to articulate. My instrument feels more responsive and bigger, has a bigger sound. And that's just applying the rosin. I haven't changed my technique. In fact, it's easier to play. I don't need to use so much finger weight or finger pressure to dig the notes out. It just happens because the rosin is allowing the bow to really grip the string. Now, after you've just rosined your bow, you're going to find that there's quite a lot of rosin on your strings. Again, just fanning the bow doesn't always get all the excess off. You can end up having a lot of white on the strings, which can cause its own problems, some squeaking. So if it really builds up and you feel there's a thick layer of rosin on your strings, take a duster or some piece of old cloth, and you can just gently wipe some of it off. Not all of it, you need some. Just wipe off the excess. If you're really lazy or in a pinch, as I sometimes do, I just use the side of my hand. I use the long edge of my palm, just go whoosh. Try to make sure you're not sweaty when you do that though, because then you'll get oil and grease on the string and you'll be back to square one to a certain extent. So yeah, you should now feel that your instrument is much better, almost back to new. And you need to keep doing this. I've deliberately not rosined my bow so I could make this video. But you should really be rosining your bow, if not every time you play, then every other time. Certainly before you have like a lesson or a rehearsal with friends, or you do a concert or a recording. Even if I've been rehearsing during the day, ready for a concert in the evening, I usually put a bit of extra rosin on my bow just before I go on stage, just to give me a bit of extra grip and security. And yeah, that's all there is to it, really. It's not tricky, but it's worth remembering that it's an issue that can cause problems with your sound. So I hope that's been helpful. If it has been, please consider liking the video or even pressing the subscribe button. I'm very grateful to everybody who subscribes to my YouTube channel. It's great to have an audience for these videos. I hope they're being useful. And I will see you in the next video.